What's up, guys? Welcome to WeddingPros. My name is Jared, and today we're talking about 5 essential gimbal moves for every wedding filmmaker. But before we dive into the video, I wanted to remind you, hit that subscribe button. Make sure that you're commenting in the comment section below. We want to hear from you. That's the reason why we're doing this. We're not doing this for money. We have like 100 subscribers right now. So we want to see your comments. We want to hear what you think about the channel. And we also want to hear what you want to hear about, really. So I think that's the housekeeping stuff. Let's get into the video. So whether you've used a gimbal or haven't used a gimbal, more than likely you've seen a gimbal move in a wedding film. It tends to be the bread and butter for most wedding videographers out there. And you're wondering how you can get, an edge on other wedding videographers or take your production game to the next level. Well, we're gonna talk about the 5 different gimbal moves that could set you apart. And we're gonna start pretty basic and we're gonna go into a little bit more advanced moves. So this is applicable whether you're first starting out or, if you've been doing a little bit of shooting and you're just looking for some recent inspiration. So before we really dive into the specific shots we're going to be covering, let me just say that all of these shots are going to require you to put your camera into autofocus. So whether that's facial detection or a center point autofocus, they're going to require you to be in that mode. We're not going to be covering any kind of manual focus. So the first move we're going to talk about is a tracking shot. And this is pretty fundamental to learning basic gimbal moves. Essentially, if you're on site and you're shooting with the bride and groom, you can do a lead tracking shot where they're following you and you're in front of them getting their faces, or you can also follow them as well. Typically when we're getting a tracking shot, it's going to be a medium to wider shot in order to show some scope, some location, as well as a little bit of expensive looking movement. Another way to spice up your tracking shots is maybe to get a little bit of foreground in it if you're walking through a field or forest, using those foreground elements to give it a little bit more motion, especially if you're shooting slow motion. It's gonna really make it look a lot more expensive than your shot actually is. Once you feel more comfortable, you can start incorporating maybe some tilts to your tracking shots as well. This is a little bit more complicated of a shot in that you're following somebody and maybe you're doing a little bit of a tilt up or a pan down to reveal your subject. That's going to be a little bit more complicated of a move if you've already mastered the tracking shot. So move number 2 we're going to talk about is a profile tracking shot. It's very similar to the first move that we discussed, only this time we're going to be moving at an adjacent distance from the bride or from the groom or whatever your subject is, and we're going to be moving sideways. So if they're moving to the left, we're also moving to the left, and we're getting a nice profile of our subject. This is a great shot to use either during the portrait session or maybe, during the first look. So move number 3 is going to be the Parallax Shot. This is a classic gimbal move that most wedding videographers have already kind of thrown in their toolbox of gimbal moves. The reason why a lot of wedding videographers love this move is the separation between the subject and the background. So when you're rotating around your subject, it's going to make your background move a lot faster than your foreground. So your subject might be looking at the camera and you're rotating around them. The background is going to be moving a lot faster. It just creates some nice depth in between your subject and the background, especially if you're shooting in slower motion. So if you're looking to intensify the parallax effect, get a really cool Michael Bay in Bad Boys or Transformers kind of look, simply throw in a longer lens and it's going to make the background move a lot faster and make it look a lot more cinematic. I find that the Parallax Shot is great for portraits of people. So if you have a bride and a groom and you're doing a little bit of movement around them, it's great for showing off their faces, maybe moving from one face to another face. I will kind of throw it out there and just warn you that simply spinning around your subject is not necessarily good cinematography. If you're doing spins, it's more than likely just going to make your audience a little bit dizzy. I would recommend shooting a lot of this in slow motion so that you really get some good slow motion effects. If you're shooting some ladies and they have longer hair and you're spinning around them and their hair is going, it's going to make it look like the most cinematic thing you've ever seen in your life. So play around with it, but don't just spin around your subjects and think that that's going to make a great video. So move number 4 is going to be a jib shot. And what we're trying to do with this shot is mimic a crane. If you watch TV or watch any live performances, a jib is oftentimes used to show location and also add a little bit of movement to our shots. So what we're going to want to do in our jib shot, in mimicking a jib, is we're gonna want to move our gimbal from a higher location to a lower location while also tilting our camera down. It's a great way to show some scope, introduce people to the new landscape that we're going to be working in, that we're going to be shooting people in. And it's a great transition. You can put a good fade or a film transition over to introduce people to new settings. Keep in mind that this might take a little bit of practice to get it exactly the way that you want, being that this is probably the shot that you're moving the farthest away from your body. You're lifting it overhead. It's going to take a little bit of arm strength. So just be aware. Definitely review your footage when you've shot this shot to make sure that everything is stable, because if you're moving your gimbal up and down, that's the one movement that your gimbal is not going to get rid of. It's going to get rid of a little bit of side to side and a little bit of shake. But if you're moving it up and down and it isn't super consistent coming down, that's when you're going to be seeing a little bit of wobble. And also, that's not something that your computer software can get rid of. So be aware of that. So the final shot we're going to discuss is a static push in or pull out. And a lot of times when we're getting this shot, it's going to be with a bride or with a groom, or maybe they're together during a portrait session. It's a very narrative style of filmmaking when you get this shot. Allows us to push in while maybe the bride or the groom are changing their eye line from point A to point B. And we're doing that in real slow motion. And it also allows us to sometimes create direct eye contact with the camera. It creates a level of intimacy with the audience that might differ from other wedding videographers and be a super cinematic look for you. Either way, a static push in or pull out should be an essential gimbal move to add to your gimbal toolbox. I'll mention about the shot as well that sometimes autofocus can be a little bit of a challenge. So making sure that your autofocus is right for your specific camera setup is something you should be thinking about before you try to attempt this move. We've all been there where maybe our autofocus will rack halfway through a shot. You want to make sure that you're super comfortable with your camera setup before trying this shot actually on site. So if you made it this far, we're actually going to give away a free and final move that's guaranteed to help you and your wedding filmmaking skills, which is to smash that subscribe button. Make sure you comment. Let us know how we're doing, guys. If you want to see specific videos, we want to hear from you. That's one of the reasons why we're doing this, is just to help the wedding filmmaking community. And make sure to listen to our podcast. Check us out on Facebook as well. And we'll see you next time.